I hope you're strapped in. It's going to be a long one today here on the 167 as we're talking about our new series, Get Ready With Me. Welcome to the 167.
1, 2, 3, let's go!
Good morning. Welcome back to the 167. I am Carissa Motley. Excited to be hosting this week. We kicked off a new series called Get Ready With Me, or GRWM if you are cool. I'm not, so I never know what those hashtags mean. When it's just a bunch of letters, I always have to ask people, like, what does this mean?
Yeah, I'm at that point now where like they use the text speech where it's just like I caught onto the if you know you know, but there's still like new abbreviations that I'm like.
There's some that I don't. I literally don't know. But luckily, we do have Gen Z expert Megan here today.
LOL means lots of love.
Megan knows what all the things mean. And Pastor Lucas, so.
Not an expert in texting and culture.
I mean, I
You're
feel
pretty
like
you're trendy.
you know a lot about culture. I mean, an expert in texting. I don't know if anybody's really an expert at that.
I've often told people that I study humanity like aliens would. I find culture fascinating from the outside.
Oh my gosh, that's so true.
That makes sense though. Like that fits.
You're a sociologist, really. You're observing.
Anthropologist.
Yeah, you're observing. Okay. So we started a new series on Sunday called Get Ready With Me. And as Lucas kind of gave us an overview of that, yes, we're getting ready for Easter. So last Sunday was Palm Sunday. So we talked some about getting ourselves ready for Easter and why that's such a big deal, why that matters, but also why we need to prepare ourselves for that. But in general, this series is going to look at a lot of places in the Bible where it says to put on, right? Like you're getting ready, you're getting dressed. So put on blank. Sometimes that also is preceded by a take off, right? So this week we were talking about taking off heaviness and putting on a garment of praise, which is a really beautiful passage. I love that passage in Isaiah. It's so beautiful. So we'll get there. But in the theme of Get Ready With Me, I just want to know, is there something in your life that you were not ready for?
I mean, I could go with big things like parenting. Like nothing prepares you for parenting. You just do it.
That's 100% true. Yeah.
But there are other times that I was unprepared and just winged it.
Give us an example. What's something that you were not ready for?
I think that you have seen me on a regular basis when people are like, oh yeah, are you ready to go to this thing? And I'm like, I've completely forgotten about it. I'm like, of course I am. And I just go.
That is true. That does happen.
I have a problem with my schedule. And so people would be like, are you ready to have lunch today? And I'm like, yes, I am. And then I will text Chris back and be like, we can't have lunch today.
I forgot I already made plans.
So there are many things that I am not ready for. But yes, parenting would be one of them.
So you just ratted yourself out to everybody. Lucas has a problem with his calendar.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Like if I ever get a personal assistant, it is solely because of that.
Because you need help with your calendar.
Yeah, I can type my own stuff or do whatever, but if I have a personal assistant, it's going to be, hey, I need you to guard my calendar.
Tell me when I have appointments. Okay, so you said parenting. I would agree with that. I think no matter how many books you read preemptively on parenting, your kids are not a textbook. So it's really hard to prepare for that. I would agree. That was a big one. I feel like I didn't even feel ready in the first place, but it's definitely the longer we've been in it, the less prepared I feel most of the time.
I would say that no one prepares you in parenting for the vulnerability that you have, that these tiny little mutants can, like...
They're not mutants.
They hurt you so badly.
Yeah.
And you love them so much.
Yeah.
And so then it sets you into these cycles that you didn't know that you had, where it's like, well, my kid, hurt my feelings, so now I'm going to pout about, or I'm going to punish them for their own well-being, but like you feel spiteful towards your children, or, it's like, and you just feel like, then you're like, oh, I'm a terrible person, I'm a terrible parent. And so you just go in all these cycles. But I think it's that vulnerability piece, is that they can hurt you so easily, just like that.
Yeah.
With their
That was-
ungratefulness and
That was that's the one for you. That's a big one. Okay, Megan, what do you think about?
I haven't been on this earth for very long, but I probably seen when my mom got cancer. That was a whole, nobody was ready or prepared
Sure.
for that
Yeah.
at all. She had a surgery. Both my parents had a gastric surgery to help their stomachs with diabetes, weight loss, all these things, their health. And it went great for my dad. My mom had that. And for a month or two, it was like, I think October, November, she had a few issues with it, some pain, but we thought it was just from the surgery.
Okay.
And then it ended up that she had like stage 3 cancer. So yeah, nobody, and that just came out of the blue, out of nowhere. Besides like the pain she was having, we thought it was from the surgery. Like nobody at all thought that. And it was really bad for a while.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's a hard one for sure.
well, there's lots that goes with that, not just the physical taking care of them, but like how you feel that, how you process it,
yeah.
the possibility of losing a loved one.
Yeah, and that was during COVID. That was February of 2020. So
Man.
great time.
I mean, speaking of COVID, something we were all not ready for, right?
That's true.
Too was COVID and like the world shutting down. That was crazy times.
Wasn't that? Yeah.
Crazy times. But to follow up on that, your mom
Oh yeah, she's healed.
has been healed of
So that's
cancer,
crazy.
so that's amazing. And yeah, probably you were not super prepared for that either, right?
No, it took a couple years. It was ups and downs, but
Yeah.
it was literally God that healed her. She had a 1% chance to live past a few months, and the doctors, she was always just surprising them and with her story. And so now she doesn't even take, I think it's been 3 years without even taking chemotherapy or any sort of anything to help with that.
That's amazing.
And her scans are continually clean.
Great. Well, praise the Lord for that. That is pretty awesome. I love that story.
Yeah.
Just
Awesome
wanted
story.
everybody to hear how that kind of turned out. All right. So when we think about getting ourselves ready, so we were both joking about Lucas hates the
Do it, Megan.
Should I do it?
nail tappy videos.
Now listen,
That's so good.
I know you like history about the year of Jubilee, but I want to give you some internet history. The whole reason that stupid thing started was there is one Instagram or TikTok channel where it was just this like Swedish model or whatever she was, and it was like a car, and she would open the car and go, Mercedes, and then click things on the car
I know
with
you
her
showed.
nails.
You made me watch these.
I was like, why is this? Because it became this cultural phenomenon, and I was like, this is the thing. Like, again, from an anthropomorphical, what is that?
What? That was
Anthropology,
that
like
wasn't a
sociology
word.
thing. I'm fascinated by this. That it was like one blonde girl that was just like, she'd be like Bentley, and then click the stuff in the car. She'd show you around the car like that, and that was all she would do is just say the name of the car. And then from then on, every girl with nails was like, look at this, and it would, it's not a Bentley. It's like, look at this iPod. It's just like everybody wanted to be. It was like the sign of luxuriousness to click your nails on something. And I'm like, this is maddening.
Well, Megan just clicked hers on her Stanley. It was quite the same sound. So
Do you feel luxurious?
No, do you feel luxurious when you do that?
Yes.
Yes. I don't have long enough nails for that, so I can't click my nails. It actually bothers me because I play piano a lot. Like if I can hear my nails clicking on the keys, I actually don't like that. So mine are short on purpose.
But you have to admit, like that's like if you do that, if you get something new and you click your nails on it, it's to make it feel important and luxurious, right?
I learned it from ASMR. So it was like kind of a joke, like they'd be like what you're saying, like, hello, I just don't even want to do it. But they'd whisper and do weird things, and like there'd be like the slime, they'd do that, and then they do the clicky things. Like that was the whole thing. So people were making fun of it or like doing it in their videos so more people would watch. So that's the trend that I see it from. I had no idea about Bentley, whatever car you're talking about, but I'm
The car
sure it did
model.
all, go through culture.
Oh
and
my gosh, there's a
its
whole like
ways.
trickle down effect. There's one right there, ASMR. Tell everybody what that stands for if they don't know, if they're old.
I don't even know what it stands for.
Oh,
Do you know?
I don't. That's one that I'm always
Let me
like,
look this up.
like I kind of know what it is,
I was
but I don't
perfectly
know.
content with just pretending like I did.
I don't actually know
I was
what
like,
that
yeah,
stands for.
ASMR.
It's like
That's
when
one I
people
always
whisper
forget.
and it relaxes
I
your
know.
body.
I have looked this up before, and it's one I cannot ever remember.
Okay.
Is it like an audio frequency thing?
Yeah, autonomous sensory meridian response. So the tingling, static-like or goosebump sensation that moves down your neck and everything like that. And it usually happens from soft sounds like whispering, tapping, or visual triggers. And it's a calming effect.
So it's basically you're connecting to something in a tactile way through audio.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tricking someone's brain out.
See, there was your useful piece of information.
The
for
bad
day.
part of that, it's basically nails on the chalkboard, but the opposite way.
Right, it's supposed to be
Yes.
soothing, not give you that reaction of nails
It's
on a
myrrh.
chalkboard.
That was when we just talked about it, we were like, oh yeah, like if you know, you know. ASMR. Oh, I'm there. I totally understand what that is. I was just gonna go look it up later.
The other one that used to throw me off for a long time was TLDR, and I was like, what is TLDR?
TLDR.
Too long, didn't read.
Oh.
Okay, whenever
TLDR.
your daughter texts me, I'm always like, I'm so old because she will text with the newer like language of
No,
IOYSM.
no,
like,
she just doesn't know words. I mean, I'm convinced, right? Like,
I wish I could just like read a text from her because I was like,
they're the worst.
what am I reading?
They're the worst.
She
Our
literally
17-year-old is like the worst about texting.
Yeah, she went into the settings on her phone and turned off auto capitalization.
None
so
of
that
her-
all of her sentences can be in lowercase.
Ew.
Right? Like, if you're
Thank
not,
you. That's how I feel about it.
Yes.
It's like, ew.
I know.
Why would
And
you do
for
that?
people who are not watching right now, like my face, I'm as an English teacher, it's like hurts me every time she texts me all lowercase. I'm like,
So Gen Z and Alpha, if you're listening to this, stop it. Which, by the way, before we get in, I do have a shout out if you want.
oh, okay, all right. So, all right, we got actual real stuff to talk about, but Lucas has a shout out first.
I want to shout out Carol Butts and Donna Clam.
All right, Carol and Donna, thank you for listening / watching. I don't know what you're doing. The 167.
They told me that they enjoyed a previous episode of the 167. I was like, oh, you guys listen to podcasts?
I love it.
That's crazy.
I love it.
We love you guys. I want to be Carol Butts when I grow up.
We all do.
Yes.
We all do. Carol, you are our spiritual hero. So, well, great. We're glad you're listening. Okay. So let's talk about GRWM. Get ready with me. Why does it matter that we get ourselves ready for things like Easter or just like in general? Like, why does it matter that we prepare ourselves or we, go through this process of take off something and put something else on? Like, why does that matter? Can't God do what he wants to do anyway?
Do you want to argue the sovereignty of God?
No.
Oh.
I just want to talk about why it matters that we prepare ourselves, because that was your whole premise on Sunday, is that we have to prepare. We should be preparing ourselves for what God wants to do.
I would say that, though. Like, I know that there's different thoughts inside of Christendom as to, like whether your salvation is preordained by God and he forces you into it. I do not hold with that. And so I think that God is going to do something in your life, and the Bible tells us that God is continually calling us
Excuse me.
back to him and all of those things. And I think that, when we talk about free will or being ready for that, I think that we miss what God is doing very often, and it has consequences.
Okay.
So not that I think that Jesus wasn't supposed to go to the cross,
Right.
but I would like to think maybe I wouldn't be the one in the crowd yelling, crucify him, if I was like, hey, I am ready for what God's doing.
Yeah.
I understand what's happening. And so I think a lot of times when we're like going, where are you, God? We're disappointed in God, or we feel like he's failing us. Like, I feel like mostly that is our lack of understanding about what God is doing.
So,
And so we're not ready to receive it.
So again, like you're saying, if you had been someone in the crowd, right, before Jesus' crucifixion, if they had understood the scriptures better, right? If they had understood the prophecies, if they had, right? I mean, you're saying there's a chance that they wouldn't have reacted the way that they would have.
Yeah, because in the Old Testament, all the prophecies, when they talk about the Messiah, they're talking about the anointed one.
Right.
And I think that people in Jerusalem had gotten it into their head, like David was anointed. Like he was an anointed one. Samuel comes and anoints him.
Right.
And so they're expecting that again.
Yeah.
They're expecting a king to rise up. He's going to be a military leader, and he's just going to be this regular dude that's the anointed one of God. And there are other people that believe that the Messiah would be the Son of God and the Son of Man. But like when somebody shows up and says, that's me, everybody's just super upset about that. And it's like, that has to be a heart condition of, like just for us, like if we're like, hey, God, I really want a job. I really want a job. I really want a job. And God goes, here, I got you a job. And you're like, well, not that job.
Sure.
Or if somebody's like, I really want to be in a relationship. I really want to be in a relationship. And he brings you somebody who is godly, but maybe isn't 6'5" and has 6-pack abs. And you're like, not that one, God, and it's like, so I think that people do that. They ask for something from the Lord, but they don't get ready to receive it, or just to be open to what God is doing.
Okay.
And it results in rejection and disappointment and all of those things. So even in the case of like healing, so like with your mom, I'm going, we've had the discussion here on the podcast before where I'm like going, yeah, I don't like it if I go to the doctor and he sets my bone, I don't run around and say that I'm healed. You know what I'm saying? Like,
He sets your bone.
yes, like if you
Like
break
when,
a bone.
Yeah, when they put
Oh,
you
okay.
in, they put it
And
in a
then
I'm
cast.
following
then
now.
he,
Yeah.
yeah, he
I'm so
puts it
confused.
puts it back and he puts it in a cast. I don't run
Yes.
around and say that I'm healed.
Right.
And so sometimes people will say, well, all got healed through the doctors, and I'm like, nah, that's it. But like for your mom's story, it's going, she's supposed to die. They're giving her chemotherapy, which essentially
Kills
is
you.
also killing you, and yet she's recovering miraculously. I'm going, okay, now I'm in.
Which, let me just say this. Trying to long story short this. She went through withdrawals from morphine because they had forgotten to fill her pain pump, which was in her back. So she literally went through withdrawals going on chemotherapy, and she almost died
Wow.
like 15 times, right? But especially this time, we didn't know what was going on. So they took her off chemotherapy to try and like save her life. And that's when her cancer started shrinking.
Wow. Yeah.
So you can't tell me that,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Right,
So,
right.
Yeah, that's
good.
that's where I'm like, yes, I'm in on that God's healing.
yes.
And so, but what happens a lot of times then is we get it in our heads that it's supposed to happen a certain way, it's supposed to happen at a certain time, it's supposed to do this, and it's supposed to do that. And then when that doesn't happen, then we go, well, now God let me down. And I haven't been ready to receive what God is doing in my life. And it ends up with crucify him. It ends up with us deconstructing. It ends up with us giving up on God.
Okay.
So that's why I think it's very important for us to be ready, because otherwise God's going to do something and we're going to miss it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing of that, of just, we are just naturally selfish people. We just care about ourselves. That's how we were born into the world of sin, right? And so it's almost like we have these scales on our eyes that we can only take off with the Lord, or like with the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
praying them off, and
Yeah.
like you said, preparing ourselves and getting ready to receive, like with those open hands. Because if not, like, I was just thinking about that when you asked that question earlier of what did I do for Holy Week to prepare myself, and I'm reading, the scriptures, going through the Gospels, reading about Palm Sunday and all these different things, so I can prepare my heart to actually know, one, what is going on, why is God doing this, again, so I'm ready to receive and like almost like celebrate what happened, because if not, it's going to pass me by. And so I feel like sometimes that happens to us. We're selfish, we don't understand, we're not preparing ourselves for it, and then God, again, he, wants to use us as a vessel. But if we're not prepared and ready, if we're just focused on ourselves, if we're not, connecting with him kind of ahead of the game, almost as if you could say, then he's going to move on to someone else. Because again, he doesn't need you, but he wants to use you. So if you're not readying yourself, you're not preparing yourself, praying, being in the word with him, like, then he's, just going to walk by. So,
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think like both of you are saying, like being familiar with the scriptures, right? Knowing who God is, knowing his character, knowing the things he said that are true, that's part of helping you be prepared, right?
Yeah.
Like you're saying, they had a certain expectation, right? That Jesus, or that the Messiah was going to be a certain way, but the scriptures don't specifically say that, right? So like they had put their own interpretation into who the Messiah was going to be, right? Like they had read that into the scriptures, and it wasn't explicitly stated that he was going to be a king, right? Like a militant king. It wasn't explicit, right? So you've got these words that they kind of misinterpreted. And so I do think that's like for us being ready, spiritually ready for what God wants to do, is like taking the, an honest look at the scriptures and who is God and what is he saying and how do we know him and those kinds of things.
Which I'm always fascinated by that, like when you think about Easter week and, the reaction of the Pharisees, I'm going, what did they want? It's like Jesus comes and we're going to talk about this through the year of Jubilee, but he comes and he preaches grace.
Right.
And he says, hey, there's this new thing that God is doing through a new covenant. And the reaction was like, no, that's not what the Messiah is supposed to do. And I'm going, what did you want him to do? Show up and like measure everyone according to the law? Because no one, and that's the crazy arrogance of it, is I think the Pharisees are going, oh yeah, this is the time where Jesus shows up and he looks at all the people that don't, do what we tell them to do as Pharisees, and then he tells them that they're bad people, and then he praises us for what we're doing. And it's just like, it was just the opposite of that. And it's
Right.
like, their own pride, they wouldn't let them receive. But I'm going, who's, like every time you read the Old Testament, even, it's like, who can stand before the Lord in righteousness? Nobody.
Yeah.
Like everybody likes to debate Job, but I'm like, that is the message of Job, is that there is no one righteous, not one. It's like, here's Job, the most righteous man on earth, and it's like, nah, he's still not God. Like,
Right.
So it's just this crazy thing that I'm going, I don't know what you guys thought was going to happen.
Right, but don't you think that that's why Jesus' teachings were so offensive to them, right? Is because they had taken the law and they'd idolized it, right? The law had become God.
Yeah.
It wasn't like...
What was the way to justify myself?
Yeah, it was absolutely. And to have self-righteousness, right? I am better, I am superior because I am upholding all 600 and whatever things in the law, right? Like I am the picture of righteousness, the religious leaders. And I think that's, like you're saying, everything that Jesus comes and teaches, and then the whole New Testament where it's like, well, no one's righteous, right? Like we can't, like, the law showed you how bad you were, right? Which is why you need grace. And so like up till then though, no one had preached that. Like
Right.
no one had told them that. And so I think they had really made the law into God. Like that was their view of God, was through the law.
And I think that there's this thing that happens, and I think it's, it's funny that God calls, Israel his children, but it's like your children, they form this reality in their head.
Yeah.
Like we talk to our children all the time where we're like, hey, listen, I don't give you this rule to ruin your fun. Like,
We are not here to ruin your life. I mean, you think that, but
Yeah.
we are not, in
I'm
fact.
like, there's something going on in your life that, you don't have big enough sight or wisdom to see.
Yeah.
And so I'm telling you no so that we can do this other thing.
Right.
And the fact is that, like, this is so that you and I can draw close together. I'm giving you this so that through obedience, you and I can have a good relationship. We even talk to our kids sometimes where they're like, I want a snack. We're like, no, because we're going to go get ice cream later, and
You just don't know it yet.
you don't know it yet. And I want to surprise you, and it's
Right.
going to be fun. And it's going to be one of these moments
But
where
you
you're
have
like,
to trust me
Yeah,
that
Dad-
there's a reason.
yeah, Dad got ice cream. And that's going to be a great moment.
Yeah.
But right now you can't see into that.
Yeah.
And so, this whole time that God's given them law, he's like, here's how you draw close to me. Here's how you draw close to
Right.
me. I'm saving you. Don't worry. More is coming. Like they're just like, this is all that there is. And he's a mean, mean man. And like
Right.
it's just this thing. And then
Yeah.
even to the point that I love that there's that passage where the Pharisees, where Jesus says, hey, you've been slaves to your sin. And they're like,
We've never been slaves to anyone.
we are the children of Abraham. We've never been enslaved to anyone. And it's like literally everyone. The Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Medes, the Persians. Like
Right.
you've literally been enslaved to every single
Right.
tribe on this earth.
Okay, so I have a question then, because as we're reflecting on this, like the fear that instills in me is, oh my gosh, I never want to be a Pharisee, right? I never want to be someone who interprets scripture so massively incorrectly
Sure.
that
yeah.
you miss Jesus.
Right.
So what are some ways that you think nowadays, as we're reading scripture, now that we do have resources, but now we also have ChatGPT and all these things that are
Yeah.
so wildly incorrect, what would you say, as someone who's trying to read scripture and interpret it the holy and godly way and not my own way?
That's a good question.
I would say kind of what we talked about earlier is the Bible prepares you to get on board with what God is doing. It's not the Bible is preparing you to manipulate God into doing what you are doing. So a lot of times we want God to get ready with us. And it's like,
Yeah.
hey, God, if you could just get ready for what I'm about to do
Yeah.
and then help me do it, that would be great.
Yeah.
And it's missed. That's when you get into the messages where the messages get boiled down to self-help, which admittedly I believe is hard because I think that there is an explosion of knowledge, but it's an explosion of knowledge through I don't know, naturalism and what am I trying to say? Secular humanism, where it's like, so like recently I had a conversation with somebody about manifestation, and so we were listening to a teaching about, if you want to have faith in something, you actually have to use your imagination to kind of project that out, right? So like, it's not something I've seen so far, but I'm imagining that my life is going to change in this way, and that lets me have faith, right? So if it's like, through faith you can move a mountain. Have you ever seen a mountain move? No, but you can imagine it moving, and then your faith starts to grow in that, and through that, kind of thing. And so they're like, isn't that manifestation? And I'm like, no, manifestation is the reality of that truth, that faith grows in you into the point where you believe it, and then you get on board with what God is doing through his power, and then you see miracles, versus I'm going to manifest what I want.
Yeah.
And it's the same principles. You say it out loud.
Yeah.
You believe in it. You
wait for it to happen.
you wait for it to happen. You are looking for something that hasn't happened yet. Like it's faith, but it's faith in yourself and in the quote unquote universe.
Right.
And so it is literally secular people describing having faith, but without God. And so, but then when you explain that to somebody else about having faith with God, they're like, well, that's just secularism. And I'm like, no. They're copying us.
Right.
It's not we are
Right.
copying them.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of those kind of concepts that have originated with the Bible and with our faith principles, but that have been corrupted, right, by the enemy, right? They've been corrupted in a way that it's like, oh, this is worldly. This isn't God. This isn't right. And so I think that there's, that perspective can be confusing to people for sure. I was thinking too, when you're saying that, like, how do you read the Bible through a lens of truth and through a lens of like, I don't want to miss God, right? You don't want to miss the forest for the trees. But I think that for something that I have started to practice is that just changing some of the words, the ways that I pray. So I grew up very much like, Lord, help me with this, or Lord, make me this, or Lord, right? Like putting the onus on him, like you do this thing in my life. But I think that like when I approach the scriptures now, I ask for like, Lord, reveal in like, change my heart and my mind, open my mind to see you in the scriptures. Don't make me do something. Don't just help me do something. Like, here's specifically what I want to ask you for. So like taking those words out of my prayers. So instead of God, help me with blank, or God, make me more patient with my kids, right? Like I have changed the language in those prayers. And I feel like, I don't know if it changes the effectiveness of the prayers, but for me, it changes my mindset about what I'm reading, right? Instead of Lord, help me to see the truth in the scriptures, I will change that just a little bit. Instead of help me to, I open my mind to see the truth in the scriptures. I choose, right? Like I acknowledge that I have a role to play in this. And so I have started doing that lately, and I feel like that has been really helpful for me in shifting my perspective in a lot of areas. So that's something I've been doing lately. Okay, we have a bunch of stuff that I do want. This is all really good, but I have a bunch of stuff I want to get to about, speaking of the Old Testament and the law. Lucas, you brought up on Sunday, and I just think this is such a fascinating concept. So you were talking about how God, right, he sets up this system for the Israelites, which is so cool, right? Where he says, okay, so you work for 6 days, on the seventh day you rest. And when they're in the wilderness, he shows them that this is possible, because on the sixth day he gives them a double portion of manna and quail, so they have enough for the seventh day. Yeah. Right? They don't have, he doesn't provide anything on the seventh day, right? And so every other day of the week, he's like, if you collect too much, it will rot and it will stink, because I need you to rely on me every day. But on the sixth day, collect the double portion. You have enough for the seventh day. There won't be anything. So, right, behave appropriately, right? Like, don't eat it all on the sixth day.
Well, I love that he's like, hey, do this and I'm going to provide.
And I provide this for you. So he shows them that very clearly in the wilderness, right? Those 40 years when, he's given them the law and he's showing them that it works, right? And so then he also tells them, so you're going to work for 6 years once they get into the promised land, and they have the land to work and to harvest and all these things. So he's preparing them in the wilderness, getting them ready. But he says, so you're going to work for 6 years, and then you're going to let the land lay fallow in the seventh year, right? And so, again, what that's doing is saying, like, okay, so in the sixth year, you will have enough for the seventh year, and really for the eighth year, because you have to restart the growing process in the eighth year, right?
Which I will touch on. This is always when we talk about first fruits offerings and things like that as well.
Good.
This is a continual principle that God does, that if you do this the way that I tell you to do it, it will be provided for you.
There will be enough.
Yeah. So that was like even with the first fruits, where like you would go out and harvest the first 10% of your field and bring it in.
Right.
And then go, I don't know, will there be enough? Yes, of course. There will be enough. Right? Yeah, there is going to be a bountiful harvest, and there's going to be enough of that.
So like that principle though of like, okay, so it's, I think we think about this sometime. We'll get to like the year of Jubilee is that times 7, right? So it's the 7 times 7 in the 50th year, all these things happen. So I think that sounds really great to us, right? Like, oh my gosh, a whole year of rest, a whole year of doing nothing, right? Like a whole year where I don't have to work. Okay, so hold on to that thought though, because I want to talk about like, how would we actually react? If God said to you, you know, don't work for a year, I'm going to provide for you. How many of us actually believe that that would happen, right? So, okay, so then again, he takes it to the next level and he says, in the 50th year, right, here's all the things that are going to happen. And it really reflects the passage in Isaiah that you referenced in the message. So I'm just going to read that.
Are you in Leviticus 25?
No, I was going to read in Isaiah 61
Okay, yeah.
first. So you can go to Leviticus after this. Right, so this is, you know, the Messiah, right? The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me. The Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He sent me to comfort the brokenhearted, to proclaim that captives will be released and prisoners will be freed. He has sent me to tell those who mourn that the time of the Lord's favor has come. So again, Jesus reads that and then goes, it's me. Right. Today, this prophecy has been fulfilled in your hearing. So there's that part. So you mentioned on Sunday how each of those are part of the year of Jubilee.
Yeah, which I think is also funny. It says that he started to tell them that. and then
and then they're like, ah! They freak
didn't
out.
even let him finish.
They don't even let him finish. Right. So the year of Jubilee, right, was good news to the poor because debts were forgiven. Comfort, or proclaim that the captives will be released. So if there were prisoners, they were supposed to be let go in the year of Jubilee. Debtors were freed. The year of the Lord's favor had come upon the nation of Israel, right? So it's like, great, right? I feel like every time we hear this, I'm like, that sounds so amazing. So like, what was the principle there? Like, why do you think God set up that system? So kind of what it was supposed to be. And then you mentioned the Israelites, scholars believe they never actually practiced
Oh yeah, there's
the year of Jubilee.
There's no evidence that they did, like historically.
So like, I don't know. Tell us about that. I feel like this is really interesting stuff.
Okay, feel free to interrupt and ask questions, 'cause otherwise this is going to be a download.
Just give us a little bit at a time.
Okay, so in Leviticus 25, he's outlining this,
Yeah.
right? And he says, "You shall count 7 weeks of years, 7 times 7 years." So, and he says this will give you 49 years. So, he says, "Then you shall sound a loud trumpet on the 10th day of the 7th month." So this is Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
So like when everybody's like, "Oh, we celebrate Yom Kippur," that's supposed to be when you celebrate Jubilee.
Okay.
And so that's also why people sometimes think that Jesus will come back on Yom Kippur.
It's the trumpets.
Feast of Trumpets, yeah.
Feast of Trumpets.
So on that day, and that's why Jubilee means the sounding of a trumpet. So on the 10th day of the 7th month, on that day of atonement, the day of atonement, Yom Kippur, you shall sound the trumpet throughout all the land. And so again, we're talking about atonement and redemption.
Right.
And you shall consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the lands to all its. You proclaim liberty to the captives.
Right.
It shall be a jubilee for you. And so that's just what he's talking about. Is he says that you shall, you're not going to sow or reap or dress the vines. It's jubilee. It's going to be holy to you. You may eat the produce of the field. So it's like if the field
if there's still stuff in the field, you can eat it.
If you walk by and there's a cabbage growing on the ground, you can pick it up and eat it. I don't care. It's like, but you're not going to actively do.
You're not going to work the land.
Yeah, and so supposedly God is going to
Provide.
And so you make, if you make a sale to your neighbor or buy from your neighbor, you shall not wrong one another. So he's saying you can still live your life, but he goes through, and so he talks about how he even says that you can't increase the prices because the food is scarce. But he goes through and he says, like, hey, as an Israelite, so when you moved into the promised land, there were certain allotments of certain land. So he would say, like, this land is for the tribe of Dan. And in the tribe of Dan, here's all of these clans, right? This is the boring part of the Bible that nobody reads.
Yep.
In like Deuteronomy and
Joshua. It's in Joshua.
Yeah. And so he outlines specifically what clan owns what land.
Yeah.
And so then in that time, you could sell your land to another Israelite.
Right.
But you could not sell it to a foreigner because then during the year of Jubilee, you can't get it back.
Right.
And so they sell all this land, and so then in the year of Jubilee, all of it reverts back to how it was the day they moved into the promised land. And so it's supposed to go back to the original owners. You're supposed to let it in. As an Israelite, if I was like, man, I'm not much of a farmer. Like I have this land, I don't want to farm it. I can actually sell that field to somebody else. But really what you're doing is you're leasing the field for 49 years, because in the 50th year, you have to give it back.
Which just Time out. Okay, so you're on a roll. But I will say that I think that that's what makes this. This is why this is in the scriptures, right? Like, this is why this is recorded, whose land is whose. Because, yes, it's a big part of Deuteronomy and Joshua. When they get to the promised land, is like saying whose land is whose, right? And so they have to have a record of that, right? They have to know where who it's going to go back to in that 50th year.
Right. And this is the funny thing about people are like, oh, these genealogies and why is this in the Bible? And I'm going, no other civilization in recorded history could tell you how 3,500 years ago who owned the land.
Right. It's very well documented.
Right. Like right now we're having a dispute in Palestine where they're like, but did the Palestinians have the land first? And like, I can show you the name of the person
Who actually had
and
this
where
land.
they lived.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
it's just like, so there's all this great documentation. So anyways, so it would go back to that and they wrote it down so they can give it back. And then same thing, if you had captured somebody, let's say they conquered the Amorites or something like that, and which is not really a thing, but so they conquer somebody in the land and they've kept them as a slave, they have to set them free after
Right.
50 years and all their family. And then if I said, hey, listen, I'm kind of falling on hard times, my farm didn't do too well, I would like to stop farming and I'm going to work for you. I'm an indentured servant.
Yeah.
In the 50th year, you'd have to let me go.
Right.
You'd have to like say, let's renegotiate the contract. And I would get my land back so I could start all over if I wanted. So all these things are happening. Prisoners are set free.
Right.
People who are indentured through servitude or debt or slaves, like all of those things, they're all reset
Yeah,
to the
released,
way
yeah.
that. So it's essentially you get to come into the promised land again.
Yeah.
So that's what Jesus is saying is like, I am and that was the whole thing is like Yeshua coming into the promised land
Yep.
was a foreshadowing of Jesus being the promised land.
Right.
That we get to come into this New Testament with grace and love and forgiveness.
Well,
So-
that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty cool. Okay, so like I said, the Lord sets up this whole system for the Israelites ahead of time, right? He tells them, here's what's going to happen. Here's what I want you to do. And here's this practice. And again, like we do as parents, this is for your benefit, for your good. So why do you think they never did it?
Well, here's the thing. If you don't do your job and you sell me your field, now I have lots of fields. And then you're going to tell me in 50 years I just have to give that back to you? What if you're a delinquent? Like what if you're just going to use the money for drugs? That's not fair. I've farmed that field for 50 years, and so for the people that were successful, that is not a good news situation.
Sure.
It's good news to the poor.
Yeah.
It's good news to the people who are downtrodden and the people who are homeless. And so
Oh my gosh, it's just like to the Pharisees who followed
Yes.
the law, who followed the rules and were quote unquote successful, the gospel was not good news to them,
because
right?
it levels the
Same
playing
thing.
field.
It makes that they're the same as everybody else.
Yes, people who are successful are not necessarily a fan of grace because they don't think that they are in need of grace.
Well, they think they've earned what they have. Yeah.
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 And so, and he outlines this whole thing about how you should do that. So like, again, you could plan ahead and say like, it was supposed to be built in. He says, does this whole thing in Leviticus where he says, hey, listen, if you're negotiating the price of the field, you should negotiate it so that it can pay for itself in 49 years because you got to give it back in the 50th year.
Right.
And you have to leave it fallow for 7 out of that, 50
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And so he's telling you ahead of time what you're supposed to do, but he's
Right.
trying to get that into their heads that it's like, oh, this would be really good. Because again, if you're successful in that field, you're going to have some money. It's not like you have to give back the money,
Right.
but it's like, hey, let's let everybody else have a turn.
Well, and I would imagine there's a sense of like the ownership has shifted then. It's my field and I made it prosperous. I made it successful, right? So
where
that's
the promised land was supposed to be a gift from God to his
exactly.
people.
Yeah, so it's more of a reliance on me and what I do versus what God has done. Like God has given you this land. God has made it a prosperous and fruitful land and you just get to work the land, right? Like it's a privilege to get this land.
And this is the thing I've heard people argue before where they're like, God is pro-slavery, like the whole just trying to rewrite the Bible. I'm like, no. First of all, even if it is slavery, like we conquered somebody and took them as a slave, like he writes this whole thing about how you're supposed to treat them well.
Correct. Yeah.
And you can
Yeah.
basically force them into labor, but you can't be mean to them. You can't whip them and,
Right.
do all that kind of stuff. And so you can't do that stuff. And every 50 years they got set free.
Right.
So it wasn't generational slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And so they got to return. And then, so it was, that comes in later about it's for the Gentiles too, right? It's for not just the people of God. But even as an Israelite, you were not allowed to sell yourself into slavery to another. You could be a servant to somebody,
right.
but it was basically like saying, hey, I will come work for you.
Yeah.
And so it was indentured servitude rather than having your own land.
Yeah.
And so there was that whole thing. And so it just kept people out of slavery. It kept people out of cruelty, and then basically there was a reset where we're going, hey, if things have gotten bad for you, we're just going to reset it. You get to have all your land back. We'll start again.
Yeah, we'll try again. So again, though, this is again how it was supposed to work, right?
Yeah. But I did not bring my giant NIV study Bible.
He
or
brought
my
a
ESV study
Post-it
Bible,
note, everybody.
but I did bring a Post-it note.
Okay, so what is on your Post-it note? Is this about what happened because they didn't practice this?
Yes.
So,
I'm gonna break your brain. here
Walk
for a
us
second.
through this because this is really crazy.
So this is so they go into the Promised Land about 1400 BC.
Okay.
Okay. So there's this progression from about 1400 to 1000 BC that they're conquering the land.
I feel like Brent should edit a timeline over the top of this so we can all visualize what's happening.
It's there.
This would be
I
complicated.
feel like I want a whiteboard right now to write this all out. So, okay.
But so we're not sure exactly the dates, but like there's this period
Roughly,
where
yes.
they're moving into land.
Yeah.
And so this is the thing is that they believed that they were able to celebrate this. They were expected to do it whilst the kingdom was united. So this is like basically from Joshua to Solomon, because after that the kingdom splits into.
Right.
They don't own all the land, so they
Right.
can't necessarily reset it.
Right.
Because most of the tribes, they always say there's 2 tribes in the south, but most of the tribes moved south, so there's a mixture of them. So there's this period. So let's say between 14 and 1,000 years BC, they're doing that. So there's this period of what later on Daniel says is 490 years of disobedience. So he said there's 7 times that basically they can run through this cycle, or 10 times I guess they can run through this cycle of 50 years, right? And so they don't do it. And so there's literally a prophecy where Jeremiah comes back and says, because you missed the Sabbaths of the land for 50 years, it has to lay fallow for 70 years. And so what happens is Babylon moves in and conquers Israel and like leads them into exile. This is Daniel. It's all that kind of stuff. And so basically for 70 years, almost to the date that they get exiled, they stay in captivity and then they come back to Jerusalem.
Right. So when they're exiled, that means they are removed from the land, right? They are no longer in Israel.
Right. And so basically, what is it, 605? It's like 605, they get permission to go back. They literally go back in 603. And in 444, they rebuild the temple walls. Okay, so there's and what's funny is there's a couple of different 70-year cycles, because what happens is Babylon comes in and takes people in the beginning, and then a couple of years later they go back in and decimate the temple.
Right.
And so the temple is torn down. This is why I brought my Post-it in 586. Okay.
Yeah.
So they return and rebuild some stuff. Like they return to Jerusalem after 70 years, but then it's like 2 years later. There's actually a 70-year cycle where the temple was in 586 and it's rebuilt in 516.
Okay.
So it's exactly 70 years.
Yeah, 70 years.
And so the other one would be like 68. So there's kind of a political return of 70 years, and then there's a spiritual return of 70 years and from that. So then after that, Daniel, he actually reads Jeremiah and says that I prayed to God about this, and God said, hey, listen, this is to let the land rest, but your disobedience of 490 years is also going to cost you 490 years. There's going to be a week of weeks, right? And so he prophesies, Daniel prophesies this 490 years of this prophecy where he says of those, so 69 out of the 70, right? So I was trying to do the math on that. It's 483 years. He says for 483 years, you're going to be waiting on the Messiah. And then the Messiah is going to come at the end of that 69 years. And then the Messiah will be cut off. And then there's 1 week left.
Okay.
So if you wonder why there's a prophecy about tribulation for 7 years, that's the missing 7 years.
So representatively, so 483 years is when Jesus' ministry starts.
So he prophesies this in 444.
Okay.
when they rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. So when they rebuild the walls, it's finally finished. So 444 obviously minus 483 is about 33 years.
Okay.
And so basically it lands right on when Jesus would be crucified, when it says in 483 years the Messiah is going to be cut off, which is most likely when Jesus dies. And so
And those remaining 7 years go
Are-
to the end.
yeah, it supposedly is like the 7 years of tribulation / the end times.
Okay. How we doing? Everybody doing okay? Everybody doing okay?
So that was,
there
but
was
all
a-
of that is caused.
Yeah, there's a pretty significant consequence
Yeah.
from them not observing, right, this practice of rest that God establishes in the law.
Yeah, Jeremiah specifically says, because you didn't do what I told you to do, now the land's going to lay fallow in desolation for 70 years.
Right.
And they get exiled for exactly 70 years.
Okay. That's pretty crazy, huh?
And then because of their disobedience, it's multiplied by another 7.
Okay.
And that's the messianic prophecy.
So
Again, I don't know how Jewish people can read that and not go,
Jesus was the Messiah.
yeah.
So when Jesus says, I've come to declare the year of the Lord's favor, right? Do you see how that has so much more meaning when you understand they would have been at the end of this period of time
Where they were punished for not doing
where
it.
they were punished for not respecting or adhering to the year of the Lord's favor. And Jesus is like, hey guys, I'm here to bring this back. I'm bringing back the year of the Lord's favor. And it then is indefinite, right? Like now we are living in the year of the Lord's favor, right? Like he brings that into existence because again, the old covenant, right? He says, this isn't what we're living under anymore. I'm here to fulfill that, right? And bring you a new covenant, which is the grace covenant that you've been talking about.
Which is also why he stops there, supposedly, is because the next line is, and the wrath of God.
Right.
And so supposedly we are living in the in-between times before the wrath of God. And so, what is that? It's, I'm going to blank on the other prophecy where it says that basically this time will happen until the fulfillment of the Gentiles, the time of the Gentiles. And so we are living in the time of the Gentiles. And then supposedly there's going to be, and that's why people in Christendom think that, or some people who are now labeled Zionists or whatever you want to say, God basically says, hey, listen, I've come to talk to the Jews, and then there's going to be the time of the Gentiles. And then at the end of the time of the Gentiles, God's going to do something else with Israel and try to call them back to repentance, which most people think during the end times, there'll be a large swath of Jewish people that give their life to Jesus Christ. And they'll find Jesus Christ finally. But right now we're living in the time of the Gentiles.
That'd be exciting. That'd be exciting. So, okay, that was a lot. If you need to pause and rewind any part of that, tell us how you did the research on that, just real quick, if people want to do their own further study.
I mean, a lot of this is available on the internet. There's a lot of
What should they search to get a good?
you can
result?
just search. You can learn about the exile. So you can search. You can type in 70-year exile. Importance of 490 years, the 490 years prophecy of Daniel. You can search those things and come up with some pretty good scholarly things. Like I said, always look for scholarly papers. Always look for things that are sources cited. Chuck Missler does a really great teaching of this on YouTube, that if you type in Chuck Missler and prophecy of Daniel, he'll talk to you about the 490 years. So there's a lot of really good teaching on this.
Okay. So you were talking about, so God sets up this system of rest and reset, right? So those are two things you're talking about with the year of Jubilee. And then you also mentioned that he has a lot to say about redemption and what it means to redeem something. And I loved how you you gave us kind of that great visual about like redeeming means to exchange, right? When you redeem your Kohl's cash, you have to exchange it, right? You can't just hold on to it and still get the benefit, right? So you have to exchange it. So Jesus, right, he exchanges himself for us. That's what Easter is about, right? He says like, okay, so you don't have to make this sacrifice anymore. I exchange for you. So I just think redemption is such a beautiful word. I just love the idea of redemption, the theme of redemption. So let's, little bigger picture, just talk about where else do we see this idea of redemption throughout the Bible? You guys think of examples of other areas where kind of like, again, God's kind of preparing, right? He's preparing people like, here's a story of redemption, and here's a story of redemption, and here's a story of redemption, so that it's not weird, right? It's not unfamiliar what Jesus comes to do. You guys think of any other examples? I'm going to go to Megan because you just talked a lot.
Thank you. I'm going to rest my voice.
He's going to rest.
Rest and reset.
Sabbath.
So I was reading in Exodus, which
Okay.
is kind of literally the precursor to what you were just saying,
Right.
Of the Israelites and getting out of that. But as I was reading that, I realized how our story now is entwined with theirs.
Okay.
And how obviously we are not one, but right, it is the redemption story of Christ. So anyways, but I was reading through it, and there's so many metaphors for Jesus and the redemption story of even as the Israelites were in Egypt and they were a slave to Egyptians. That is almost as if, like, you know, the metaphor of us being slave to our sin and just going through that, and how they cried out to the Lord helped them. And even just all the details I was reading through the Exodus story of they had, you know, the Lord told them, okay, like, make the bread, but it's unleavened bread. And they tell them, okay, like, the blood on the doors, it has to be, you know, the purified lamb, which obviously is Jesus. And it covers them, their families, their homes, and the angel of death walks through and sees that blood covered, like, they're covered with the blood of Jesus,
Right.
you know, and it
Right.
passes through and they're
Yeah.
saved.
Yeah.
And just there's so many different areas in that story specifically that just foreshadow Jesus in the story, but like to the T. And it was just blowing my mind, and just like I just loved reading it, and even like how they go out of that, and how Jesus or the Lord saves them, and he's like the cloud by day, you know, fire by night with them, guiding them through and providing for them. And then the man, like, there's just so much in there in that Exodus story that points to Jesus. And it is the exact same. It's like pretty much like almost a prophecy. They're living through it, and it's going to happen again.
Right, and they're exchanging their slavery for freedom, right?
Yes.
Like, God's bringing them from this, and
And
he's
then
saying,
complaining about their freedom.
he's saying, put the slaver behind you. Yes, then they
Yes.
spend a lot of time not loving the way that God chose to free them.
But I do think that's a prime example
yes.
of they want their cake and eat it too, right?
Sure.
I don't want to be enslaved in Egypt, but man, do you remember how good it was in Egypt?
Do you remember when we had all this produce, all the yummy things we could eat in Egypt?
It's like, do you remember brick making? It was so easy.
It's not so easy. I know. I love, like, the first half of Exodus, especially. Like, man, you can read that in one sitting. Like, the first 22 chapters.
so-
I
it's
think.
a-
I
it's
mean,
a page
It
turner,
is.
you know?
It is. It's epic. It's epic. And like, I think it's easy for us to be like, come on, Israel. Like, what? What were you guys thinking afterwards? You have this dramatic redemption story.
Which we were just talking about this too. I was talking about it with my brother actually on the phone too, where he was like, he was talking about the pole where like they get bit by poisonous snakes, and he puts the pole up and he says, hey, you have to look.
Yeah, Moses does.
You have to look up to the curse on a tree, and it's like, and then in the New Testament it's like Jesus became a curse, and it's like, oh my gosh,
Right.
You know, like, and so,
Right.
but there's always this thing of going. I told him, I was like, hey, listen, there's this whole theme where it's like the people that left Egypt could not exchange it. Like they kept going back. They kept going back to idol worship. They kept going back to complaining about it. And then so when they reject the promised land, they literally would not exchange one for the other.
Right.
And so it's like, okay. And God's like, I'm just going to wait you out.
Yep.
No, wait for you to all die.
Yeah.
You
'cause
will all die in the wilderness.
My brother was talking to me. He's like, man, they just complained a lot about manna and quail. And I was like, that's because they weren't supposed to eat it for 40 years. They were supposed to eat it for like 6 months. But because of their rejection, then they end up eating it for 40 years.
Well, and like the whole, like, if you look at the miles of like where the promised land was and how they're out, it's not that long.
Yeah,
right.
It
It's
doesn't
not
take them
supposed to
very
take
long
that
to
long.
get from Egypt
Exactly.
to the promised land.
Right.
They're mostly held up by building the tabernacle and Mount Sinai.
Yeah.
And so that's the big holdup, is that God's prepping their culture to move in. And so,
Getting them ready.
but I was telling Josh, I was like, this is the whole thing though, is that he literally has to wait for them to die out until you have an entire generation that has grown up in the desert
Yep.
and is just awesome. Because if they disobey, they get swallowed by the earth. And so they are the people who are obedient.
Yeah.
And if they're weak, they get eaten by the wilderness.
Right,
You know, like,
right.
and so it's like, I told him it was like Dune. Like in Dune, the whole premise of Dune is that
Someone is 100% going to talk to you about this
yes,
this week.
listen, in Dune, the sci-fi thing, it's about a people called the Fremen who live in the desert.
Yep.
And they conquer the entire universe because they're so strong, because literally the desert will kill you if
They've
you're not.
learned how to live in the desert, which
Yeah.
is the harshest of all
And so
environments.
you have an entire generation that they've never known Egypt, because other than Caleb and Joshua, it's like, because basically the 40-year-olds were babies
Right.
when they reject the promised land. And so anyone that's of fighting age or whatever is basically someone that has not only just survived the wilderness eating manna and quail every day, but they have never known Egypt. They've never known slavery. They've only known freedom. If they were disobedient, they got culled, by, being swallowed by the earth or poisoned by water. And so
Yes.
then basically you have this elite fighting team of people who just believe God every day for their daily bread. And it's incredible. But like I said, if you don't read
But how wild is that to think about growing up and like just not knowing anything different than there's food on the ground that I just go out and I get what I need every day.
yeah.
Every day, that's what happens. Like just growing up with that. Like, can you just think about how, I don't know, I think about this with our kids, right? That like we grew up in kind of different church traditions than what we're in now. And like our 8-year-old, when she is sick or when she sees someone who's like hurting or someone who's sick, she goes, "Oh, mommy, we should pray for them." I didn't grow up doing that, right? Like that's a thing we've adapted to and adopted as adults. But like for her, that's normal. Like that's her first reaction.
Right.
"Oh, mommy, I skinned my knee. Will you pray for it?" Right? Like that's her. Like so, these Israelites who grew up in the desert, like that's their whole normal experience, which is like wild to me.
But so then when you say, "Would you guys like to move into a land of milk and honey?" They're like, "Yes, I." Like that's easy for them to
Sure.
exchange that.
Sure.
Whereas, slavery it was hard for that to get it out of their minds.
Yeah.
But you were also reading.
Oh, I was just
Ruth.
saying, and so I am in a chronological Bible reading plan for the year, and I just read the book of Ruth this morning, which also reads very quickly and is an epic story, right? But the the concept there is a term called the kinsman redeemer, and so Boaz redeems Ruth, right? She exchanges her widowhood and even her, I think you could take that to she has to kind of exchange her nationality. Like she's not an Israelite. She's a Moabite, and so she comes home with Naomi after her husband dies back into Israel, and so like she exchanges that old life for this new life with Boaz, and then like literally her great grandson is King David.
Yep.
I mean, that's wild, right? Like it's crazy.
And that again was to maintain the land.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
the concept was, your clan and your family get a certain allotment of land. And so if there was somebody that married a woman and then they didn't have a kid, well, now what happens to the land? It's now you screwed up the
You
whole
don't have
system.
it, yeah. It's not
And
yours
so
anymore.
it was supposed to be the next kinsman, which was usually a brother or a cousin, would actually go and take that woman. He had the option to take her as his wife.
Right.
But if they bore a son, like it was his responsibility to give her a son.
It wasn't his son,
It
though.
was not considered his
Yeah.
son. It was considered the dead father's, the
Son.
first husband's
Yeah.
son.
Yeah.
And so that way that could continue in the land and everything like that. When they did the year of Jubilee, it would reset correctly.
Right. So lots of threads of redemption through the scriptures. I think too about Rahab, right? Like Rahab exchanges her life that she is currently living, right? When the spies come to Joshua and they walk around Jericho or they come to Jericho, they redeem her out of that, and she becomes part of the Israelite nation. So there's
And
lots
part of
of
Jesus'
and
lineage.
part of Jesus' lineage, right? So a lot of cool stories of redemption. We're getting super long. I have one other thing I want to talk about because you were talking about
The
in Isaiah.
166.
In Isaiah, right? The rest of that passage says that God will do this exchange, right? He says, "To those who mourn in Israel, he will give a crown of beauty instead of ashes, a joyous blessing instead of mourning, festive praise instead of despair." So he's calling them, he's saying, I want to exchange these things, right? Not just put one on top of the other. So you did a really interesting job, I think, of representing that, where Lucas was preaching with a weighted vest on, how did that feel?
It was fine.
Were you tired by the end of that?
I took most of the weight out of it. I mean, to be honest. I put enough in it that it was weighted, and then I added 12 pounds during the sermon.
Okay, so there was this visual, though, of like every time that we have these things, sometimes they're emotional, sometimes they're physical, but like we're picking up weights all the time and kind of putting them into on us, right? So we have this garment of heaviness. We have this heaviness that sits upon us for a number of reasons. And And so you had this, you were like, if I just put a shirt on over that, right? Like, A, it looks weird. Like, B, you can still see the heaviness, right? It doesn't make the heaviness
It's like
go
when people
away.
come to you, be like, man, I've been depressed. Be like, we know.
Right. It doesn't make it go away to just put something on top of it. So you're saying there's an exchange that has to happen here when God's saying, I want to give you, right, beauty for ashes. You can't just keep the ashes. Like, you have to exchange them for something, right? So he's saying, exchange your heaviness, right, and put on instead this garment of praise. Don't just put that on top. So I was just interested in, like, your thoughts on that. I also thought it was great where you talked about, like, that heaviness doesn't. So also somebody thought you were wearing a tactical vest at first, and I was like, oh no, there's a great image there that it's not a tactical vest. Like, a weighted vest is not a tactical vest. It's not meant to protect you, right? A weighted vest isn't like a bulletproof vest, right? So carrying that heaviness is not supposed to protect us, and yet we believe that it does, right? Like, I've got all this stuff in front of me, and so it's going to protect me in some way. So it's not supposed, like, I think we think of it like a weighted blanket. Oh, so cozy. So, like, it's making my nervous system more calm, right? Like, it's not the same, right? This garment of
No, this
heaviness.
makes my calves hurt.
Right. So, like, if we think about it, it's not supposed to protect us, and it is heavy, and it weighs us down, and it has these effects on our bodies. Like, why is it so hard for us to take that off? Because I think it is. I think that's a real thing, where it is so hard to physically and spiritually and emotionally take off heaviness and exchange it for something. We just want to put something on top most of the time. I mean, that's been my experience. I just want to put something over top.
Yeah, but how many times then have you gone into a worship service and, like, you're worrying about something and you can't get it out of your brain, and or you're depressed or you're sick and you're doing those things, and you come into worship and then you're like, I wasn't feeling it this week.
No, for sure.
And it's like,
I agree.
well, yes, because that's what's on your brain.
Yeah. That's what's on, and that's what's on you, right? Like, it's literally it's getting on your spirit too.
I think sometimes people think that surrender is not an action.
Okay.
So in the sense of, like, oh, like, I'm just going to surrender it to God. Like you're saying, like, I'm going to take off this heaviness. It's going to be fine. But they don't really think that you have to actually pick it up and throw it off of you. They're just like, yeah, it's just going to happen to me. Like, and so when you go into worship, you're just going to be like, oh, like, yeah, I'm worrying about this, but, God will take care of it, whatever. But then you continue to think about it. You're not actually submitting to the Lord and surrendering, like, giving that up to Him.
Right.
Like, there is an action that you have to do and continually do with that. And people don't realize it, or they don't actually want to.
Can I rat out my dad here for a second?
I don't know.
Made me think about
I don't know.
Randy told me a story about him. So sorry, Dad. Dad watches the podcast. My dad's been sick.
Yeah.
And then my mom got sick, and my dad took my mom while he was sick to the ER. And he said it was like 88 degrees outside, so he's wearing shorts and a t-shirt. And then you get in the ER and it's
freezing.
like 40 degrees in there. And he said the whole time he was like, "This is so freezing in here," whatever. And my mom, when he was telling that story to Randy, my mom said that she looked at Randy and goes, "They offered him a blanket and he said no." I don't need a blanket. But that's literally what's happening to us a lot of the times, where it's like, I'm depressed and I'm this and I'm that and then all of a sudden it's like, well, what if you praise the Lord because the Lord's going to do something amazing? Man, I don't, I would rather keep this.
Yeah.
I would rather be upset. I would rather, this feels familiar to me. I need to fix this before I praise. I need to do this. I need to do this. And it's like, no. If you start to praise the Lord, you start to sing over yourself, and you start to sing to the Lord, and you start to say the things that are truth, which is like, God will provide for me. God will this. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I actually feel better about this. Like because you're singing truth, you're singing, praises to the Lord. It's like doing that is the medicine for heaviness. And it's like,
and that's, I do think that is a way you take that weight off. Like, if you think of it like your weighted vest, you can take off little bits of it at a time by doing some of these activities.
Well, it would be like if I had that, like I had that hoodie, and if I said, "Hey, I need you to put this on," and you're like, "Well, I can't put that on without taking this off." But what I told you was to put this on, and you go, "Okay, well, I'll take it off and I'll put on my garment of praise, and then I'll put back on the heavens." And then once you get the praise on, you're like, "Oh, I guess I don't really want that other thing."
Yeah, this feels much better.
And so it's like, but it's the initial, you have to take it off. You have to put it down. And that's what, like, I didn't really think about till later on when I was writing my sermon, but the thing about David where he was putting on the habits of grief.
Yeah.
It's like we used to do that where if a I'd say a woman, but it was like when we were in college. If a girlfriend broke up with somebody in the dorm, we could tell because they were listening to Dashboard Confessional.
I was just about to say that.
They would lock
Sad
themselves in their
music.
room.
Yes,
They'd turn off the
yes.
lights. They'd light a candle and listen to Dashboard Confessional, just sit in the dark. And I'm like going, you are a loser. Get up. Like, come to lunch with us. I don't want to go to lunch. Why? Because you'll actually be happy.
Yeah.
Like, because you'll go to lunch and have a good time and then realize this isn't a big deal. You need it to be a big deal so that it can justify whatever lie you're telling yourself, which is, I'll never get over this, where I'm trying to make this relationship more important than what it was, and you need that, I feel like, to feel some need. And it's just weird. And it's like, and I do it too. So I'm not down on anybody's, but it's like that same thing where, even losing a loved one, I'm going, man, this is terrible. And you have to grieve that. And it's like, but either you'll see them in heaven or you're not going to, but we're going to find that out someday. And
This is super encouraging.
and you can't do anything about it. But I mean, like, that's the thing, is that you can praise the Lord and say, Lord, thank you for the time that I had with that person. Thank you for what they did in my life. Thank you. It's like,
Sure.
and again, that will be twisted by culture to go, oh, you're practicing mindfulness or gratefulness. And it's like, no, you're coming in alignment with what the Spirit is doing.
It's good.
So, quick question, but I know we're kind of out of time. So, for the ladies and the breakup songs, because I try to pull so many of my friends out of that too, or the people that are grieving, or whether it's a job or a family member, how would you say that when do they know then the grieving is over? Because David did have a time of grieving for his son, but when his son had died, he was like, okay, done. But sometimes we don't have. You break up, is it a day, is it a week, or when someone dies? Like,
Right.
how do you know when the grieving is over and when to praise?
I think that you praise and then you'll figure it out. So
Interesting.
Havilah Cunningham says that in one of her teachings about boundaries, where she says that emotions are like waves and you can let it break over you or you can ride it, and you get to choose. And so when you're riding grief, you're trying to stay on top of the wave and ride it for as long as you possibly can, if you're thinking about surfing. And it's like, versus if you just wash over to you, like when we lost our children, there'd be times in the day where I would literally just stop and cry for 10 minutes and then go, okay, and I'm done, right? And it was like, I was sad about that. So I experienced sadness, and then it like the wave washed over me, and it was fine.
And then it goes back out.
Right. But if I work myself up and go, oh my gosh, I'll never get over this, and I start to ride that wave, I'm the only one that can get off. And so praise is a way that you can get off that, is that you can sit there and go, I start to feel myself get sad or whatever, or I'm depressed, I'm grieving, and I go, you know what, I'm going to praise the Lord for all the things that he has done in my life. And like I said, then after that, you're going to go, oh, I guess this is okay.
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely a couple of songs for me that I was like, rather than being in my, and it's still, music is an emotional thing, right? So like it still had that emotional appeal, but it was truth. So like this song by Meredith Andrews called Not for a Moment, and it was like, after all, in all things, you are God, you are faithful, not for a moment have you forsaken me, right? I know I am not alone. And it's a beautiful song, right? So it still kind of evoked those like emotions in me that really like, you know what I mean by like an emotional song. So it still had that, but it like I was able to, like, that was truth. I was able to say, here's who God is. And I know that no matter what is happening in this physical realm, in my body, in my mind, in my heart, God is still God, right? And that doesn't change, right? Like, after all, you are faithful. After all, you are constant. After all, you are only good. After all, right? Like, and so I have to, there were days when that really, really did not feel true. It didn't feel true. It felt like, you are good, and yet I'm here without a thing that I really wanted, right? I'm here, with an unfulfilled promise. I'm here in a season of sadness, and I feel like the Lord really met me in that space and said, it's okay to be sad. And then he gave me Lucas, who was able to say, we both had these moments of like, it was really sad to think about, we're never going to get to meet these children. We're never going to get to see who they grow up to become. We're never going to get to experience this with them and this with them. And Lucas was like, but they're with Jesus. Like, why would I wish them to be here in this world and be hurt over being with Jesus? Mm-hmm. Right? And that was huge for me when you said that. That was huge. And just this realization that, like, yeah, because I was so I wished, right? I wish I got to meet these kids, and I wish we got to have all these experiences, and I wish Lucas would get to walk our daughters down the aisle, if they were, we don't get to see them grow up and get married and have kids, and but like all of that pales in comparison to heaven, right? And to like know that they're in heaven, and I wouldn't wish them back once they've been in heaven, right?
Well, and that was, I think the way I said it to you is I realized I was selfish. That I was like, oh, I really would like to see her go to prom, and I'm like, what if she got cancer, whatever,
Right.
And I'm going,
right.
so all the pain, all the skin knees, all the heartbreak, all that, like, why? So I could have
Yeah.
a memory in my phone, what is that about? And so like that's the thing, is that a lot of it is our own lack of understanding, where it's like, and like I said, that's not saying that grief isn't real, and that
Yeah.
you should, like, Christians are robots, and you'd be like, oh, my kid died, good for them, it's like, but that truth will be what brings you back from the edge,
Right.
is saying, Lord, I know that you're faithful. I know that we're going to have more kids. I know that you've given us this promise. I'm going to see this kid in heaven someday. I thank you so much that you're taking care of them. Like, I praise him. And
Yeah.
that's what snaps you back out of that. And so the praise sometimes has to come first.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you would say kind of like when the grief, when all that, like let it wash over you, be in that, but don't either hold on to that or push it down. So you're just letting it come and letting it go, instead of
Right.
staying in one or staying
Right.
in the other, and then you're kind of stuck.
Right.
And
Like
then
if-
that's when the no praise
Yeah,
comes in.
if you think about sitting on a beach, right, where of the ocean, the waves come in, they go out, and they come in, and they go out, right? You're not staying in a
Right.
constant space. And, there's all these great metaphors about that, spiritually, like the beach is changing all the time around you. And so it's not the same wave coming back at you all the time. Your emotions will shift and they will change, and, letting that come and go, not, like you said, not trying to hold it, not trying to stay in that space, I think is a really healthy way to approach that.
Well, if you've ever surfed or ever body surfed, you will know that when you ride those waves, they take you further and further away.
Right.
So like you can only ride a wave horizontally. And so, something might wash over you, or, that's kind of this vertical relation, or, at least straight on relationship where you stay on the side of the beach. If you start riding waves, you'll find yourself 2 miles down the
Yeah,
beach.
you drift down away from where you started.
And so I would leave it up to you, but I would even ask somebody next to you or like near you of like, am I engaging in emotionalism? Am I just getting worked up because I like the feeling, I like the ups and downs and
Yeah.
those kind of things, or do I need to heal from this? But I'll tell you that like you got to put on praise first before you can heal.
Yeah.
That's what helps. It's the medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that was kind of a heavy note to end on, but thank you for being here this morning. Again, this series is going to continue even past Easter, of things that the Lord has said, hey, get ready with me for what I want to do by putting on certain things in your life. And so I'm excited to see what we're going to, like, what's the wardrobe, right? What are we going to end up with here by the end of the series? So join us this Sunday for Easter. We really hope to see you this Sunday for Easter. Bring someone who needs to hear the message of Jesus, the redemption story. We are really excited about Easter this Sunday. Excited to see you all. We're going to be here bright and early, so come join us.
I don't know about bright.
We're going to be here bright and early. The worship team's already been prepping ourselves for how early we're getting here on Sunday, so it's going to be good. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on 167.
If you enjoyed this episode of the 167, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, get notified, leave a 5-star rating and a positive review. Tell all your friends to listen as well. Make sure you go over to newlifegardener.com and check out all that we have to offer as a church, and check out our messages online as well. Thanks for listening.